Hey man, what's your bacon?
You gotta tell everybody what that means first.
It's that extra side topping or main course in life that makes everything about your day even better.
Whether it's movies, music, cooking, paranormal, video games, whatever it is that helps you unwind, maybe even get a little bit inspired. We talk to hot new bands.
We are Felicity.
Hey, this is Bradley from Emerosa.
TV personalities.
Hi, my name is Rachel Pizzolatto.
Hi, my name is Patty Magley.
Wrestling personalities.
Hi everybody, I am Eric Bischoff, WWE Hall of Famer, Godfather here.
Actors.
This is Sean Kanan. Thank you for joining us.
Fellow podcasters.
Emo Social Club.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Dave Schrader.
Pretty much any like-minded creative across all facets of the entertainment industry.
You can check out Bacon is My Podcast on all streaming platforms, as well as the Strangerhood TV YouTube channel. New episodes dropping every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Listen in when we find the answer to the question,
What's your bacon?
This is WWE superstar Drew McIntyre, and you're listening to the WWE Podcast.
The champ is the one that everybody wants, me. Becky Lynch is going to WrestleMania. Claymore! Austin 316 says I just whipped your ass. This is my iron. You're going to acknowledge me.
All right, everybody, welcome to the WWE Podcast. It is Wednesday, May 10th, 2023. A lot of emails to get to today, a few voicemails, so heavy on the emails, light on the voicemails, but I think that things are going to ramp up in a big way from you guys as we get closer to and past Night of Champions, as we will crown a brand new World Heavyweight Champion. I would imagine Seth Rollins is the heavy favorite, no matter who the other person is from SmackDown, to win the whole thing. But before we get there, I want to welcome some people to the WWE Podcast on Patreon, and James Rainville and Martin Miller. I might have already mentioned you, Martin. If I haven't, and Tommy Larson. If I have already mentioned you guys, well, then you get a double shout out. I honestly can't remember who I shouted out the last time, so I'd rather cover you twice than not at all. So thank you, James and Martin. You guys are supporting the show in a big way, and I appreciate that very much. Enjoy your ad-free content. You can join James, Martin, Tommy, Jordan, another James. We got a lot of great patrons over there at patreon.com that are enjoying our ad-free content and videos and exclusive After Dark shows at patreon.com/WWE podcast. So let's just jump into it, guys. We got a lot of emails, and as always, patrons get priority. So let's get to, let's start out with Rocky T and see what he's got to say.
Hey, yo, it's me.
It's Rocky T.
All right, Rocky T. Love the intro. Let's get to your email and Backlash. Io Sky took Bianca to the limit like no one before her, and it was the first time in a long time I felt Bianca might lose. But you know what? I don't disagree that there were spots in the match that you could see her winning, but here's the undertone of the match going in. There was tension, a little bit of tension between Io Sky and Bayley. If you're going to further the tension, why would you allow Bayley to allow Io Sky to get the victory and become women's champion when Bayley's the one that gave up her spot in that triple threat many weeks ago to determine the number one contender for Bianca? So we all know that this group's going to a split. Plus, Io Sky only recently came into relevance. I mean, she was just kind of a faceless goon for most fans in the Damage Control group. So I don't think she was ready, but certainly the Puerto Rican crowd was ready, right? Boy, they were ready. I was ready. We're all ready. Bianca Belair has overstayed her welcome, not just as champion, but also as a babyface, more importantly. I think that she still has some work to do, Io Sky that is, in order to get her to the place where she could be a real threat. But no, hey, I'm not bashing your take there. Okay, so it took Rollins 3 stomps to finish Omos, and one of them was a super stomp off the top rope, but it only took Brock 1 F5. Yeah, I mean, It's the way it goes. There's inconsistency with the kickouts of finishes. Apparently, the F5 is more powerful than stomping someone's skull to the mat 3 times. I don't know. I mean, yeah, it's pro wrestling. I mean, that's just pro wrestling, right? They have finisher kickouts more often than not, but having Omos not kick out of the F5, but having Cody Rhodes kick out of it, right? I mean, it's there's arguments to be made. I think as a whole, there's an issue WWE wide of finishes being kicked out too much. So I like when there's just one and done. I don't like how Cody Rhodes does multiple finishes now just because he doesn't have faith that his finish is going to be able to put down his opponent. But all right. Triple Threat was solid. I expected more from Zelina Vega in a losing effort. Damian Priest made Bad Bunny look like $1 million, especially when Bunny hit the finish with the Puerto Rico Destroyer instead of the Canadian Destroyer. Yes. Yeah, I mean, Bad Bunny has put in the work. No doubt about it, and I appreciate that because there's a lot of celebrities that come in, don't take this seriously, don't even want to take any bumps and want to win a match and, go back to Hollywood. That's not Bad Bunny here, and with his schedule and everything else he's got going on, he has dedicated clearly a lot of time to doing this, and the fact that the talent feels safe enough to work with him, that's also telling because it's about keeping your opponent safe, and that Canadian, or rather Puerto Rican Destroyer, is easily one that could go wrong very quickly. It's almost kind of an inverted pile driver. If you do it wrong, your opponent's paralyzed or dead. And so, yeah. All right. Let's see. Carlito may have had the biggest pop of the night. I would argue that he had the biggest pop in years for anybody, for anything. And it's arguable. No doubt about it. He at least had the pop of the night. I'm indifferent about Solo's reaction when he grabbed Jay and almost spiked him. I think holding and teasing the spike gave it completely away that a turn is coming, no doubt. Well, yeah, I mean, the turn is coming. I don't think that they gave away the farm here. They've been teasing it for a long time, but I agree that the hold took too long. I think would have been a better solution, and one that would have been a more effective is one of two things. Either he didn't hold him so quickly or hold him so long, because as he was holding him, he shouldn't have debated whether or not to spike him because at that point he knew who he was. It wasn't like he thought that Solo thought someone snuck up on him and he spiked him and then, oh my God, Solo, did he do that on purpose? That's the other option, number 2, which I would have gone with is Solo was just in the moment, adrenaline pumping, and he didn't know who was pulling on him, and he just spiked whoever was there and then realized it was Jay, but then he doesn't show much remorse. So the question is, did he do it on purpose? And that's not the road they went, but... All right, when Cody realized that Brock was busted open, I bet that in his mind he was screaming, hell yeah, especially after he rubbed it all over his body. Nice visual and creative finish. Totally agree. Totally agree. When that kind of stuff happens, you take advantage. When the wrestling gods give you that, and Brock has done that a couple of times, whether or not it's on purpose, we don't know. But yeah, you take advantage, and you make the most of it. Blood is so effective because now it's never seen unless it's done the hard way. All right. And yes, Rocky T has a new episode coming out of Wrestle Magic done with Michael Gross, rather, the Gardner. That's not your last name. But Wrestle Magic episode 3 is coming, guys. And the topic is going to be the revolution of Lucha Underground. So if you're interested in such things, you're interested really in the history of wrestling and things that no one else is talking about, Wrestle Magic is one of those shows. And we've only had a couple of them on the show now, but they've gotten pretty good feedback from most of you. And if you want to learn about the history of wrestling, no better place to go than that podcast. So episode 3 is coming out soon. All right. Thanks, Rocky T. Let's jump into, I want to go to Patreon directly, make sure I don't miss any of y'all. Aha. I know who we're getting to. Somebody you haven't heard from in quite a while. And that is Miller from beautiful South Africa, and he says, heard you saying all the members from the down under Australia, especially Melbourne, and you would love to visit there. Good destination, but before you make that decision, really do keep South Africa in mind. Also, it's the most beautiful place in the world. I have nothing against South Africa. I'm not certainly not disagreeing with you. I've never been there. Would love to. Difficult, with kids and family and full-time job and this side gig that's turning into a full-time job. Not easy. Certainly easier said than done. In my single life, about 10 years ago, this would have been a much easier task to fulfill. Yeah, there's a lot of places I'd love to visit, no doubt. Anyways, I was just thinking, Ric Flair and John Cena both on 16-time title winners, and then Triple H and Randy on 14. All credit to Rick and what he meant to the industry, but I don't feel he should be the holder going any further. Easiest to dethrone him is who is equal to him, which is John Cena, but it feels like being equal makes that spot less significant for both. Cena being a part-timer, getting the 17th reign feels forced. Yeah, here's the thing. I don't think there's really anything else John Cena could do to make himself feel like a bigger star. I don't. And I don't believe, if I was to take a guess, I don't think Cena is going to be the one to beat the record of Ric Flair, or at least I wouldn't do it. And here's why. Number one, as I mentioned, there's nothing really you need to add, and it would feel forced, and it would feel like they're just doing it to do it. But why don't you do it with someone that comes along that is deserving of it? That said, you would also have to go through a lot of different title changes and have this person win and lose a lot. See, I don't know if 16-time winner Ric Flair, that 16 number should be something that people aspire to. Because ultimately, that number also means you lost it 16 times, right? Because Ric Flair is no longer champion. If he was still champion, he would have lost it 15 times. But since, and that's one thing I don't know why people in promos don't ever bring up, that, I'm an 18-time or, 28-time, this and that. I'm exaggerating. But you could, somebody who could clap back and say, okay, yeah, you're a 10-time tag team champion. Doesn't that also mean that you've lost it more than anybody else on the roster, that you can hold on to this thing? So having someone win it more times doesn't make them better. It actually, if you want to argue, makes them less effective at holding on to it. Or in Ric Flair's career, he had such a long career that longer than many others. Ric Flair had it. He had like a 30-year career, right? Like Ric Flair, he is an exception to the rule, which makes sense that he had it 16 times. So I don't know if there really will be anyone else that comes along that has that long of a career. John Cena had a 20-year career, kind of. Right? He kind of bowed out the last few years and has done Hollywood. His body's aging, makes sense, right? But there are very few people, I think, that will come along that will be able to challenge Rick's career, Rick's record, because of the fact that longevity needs to be a part of being able to get to that number. Unless you're just hot-shotting to get to that. I hope that's not what is in the plans. But I don't think it's as important as people make it out to be. To me, it's length of the run. Look at Roman Reigns, right? Sometimes how long you hold it, how many days, to me, is more of an indicator of success than it is for how many times you've won it, because you can hold it more times, but as an aggregate, fewer days, or you can have fewer title reigns and in total hold the belt longer. And that to me is more of an indicator of success. Look at, for God's sakes, like Stone Cold Steve Austin, right? Was he a 7-time world champion? And he's not in the conversation, obviously, to beat Ric Flair's career, but you could argue that Stone Cold is the biggest star of all time. Undertaker is under 10, right? Nowhere near 16. So I don't know. People make a big deal out of this. I don't think it's that big of a deal. What does it mean? Okay, you lost it more than anyone else in history. Okay, you did win it more than anyone else in history, but you also lost it more, right? So anyway, I'm going to stop there. Randy Orton, I feel would be awesome to accomplish this. That means he has to win it twice to be able to get to the 17th time. And the last few years, it's been all about long, let me say it again, long title reigns, both titles. Yeah, again, Miller, you're in a different era now. We're now in the Triple H era. Don't forget, we are in the Triple H era, and he clearly, one of his philosophies is, and I don't disagree, longer title reigns. Not everyone has to have a long title reign. But it was to the point under the Vince McMahon regime at times where it was just hot-shotting. People couldn't hold on to the belts. They were doing title changes every other week. It was getting kind of insane. Yeah. Okay, great. Now to have the World Heavyweight title back, it was just such a lost opportunity for us making moments besides Roman's long title reign, giving the opportunities for Cena or Orton getting the most reigns. Keep it all well. Cheers. Yeah, I mean, Randy Orton is probably, if you're going to look at who's the most likely, based on the fact that Randy Orton is still, once he comes back, an active competitor that can perform at a high level, more active than John Cena would be. Certainly, Randy Orton is, I think, a better candidate for it, even though he's one title reign behind Cena. But again, I don't think this is a huge deal. I don't think fans look at this. Fans right now are more concerned about the length of title reigns. And as I mentioned earlier, I think that's a better indicator of success than, I won it more times. Okay. But anyway, thanks, Miller. Let's jump into our next email. And let's see. Let's get to DJ Kuzmo. And he says, this is DJ Kuzmo back at it again. And a 1 and a 2 and a 3. Thank you, Brock. Thank you, Brock. Thank you, Brock. I am so happy that Cody will not be included in the hunt to win the World Heavyweight Championship, because this is Seth's opportunity to finally win a major world championship, which has been long overdue. Plus, Cody's focus has now shifted back to Brock. This is good for booking for both Cody and Seth getting booked to potentially win the World Heavyweight Championship, and Cody being booked for a long-term perspective is in getting back to, quote, the top of the mountain to eventually become world champion next year. Plus, I'm not ready for a Cody Rhodes World Championship reign yet. He needs to get beaten down more where fans start to feel sympathy for the babyface, and I'm glad that Brock isn't being booked to be one, quote, block Cody. The one to, quote, block Cody from getting another world title opportunity this soon. Just an opinion. Yeah, look, Dana Brooke, that's your next topic. I don't think that right now fans are showing any signs of turning on Cody, but it seems as if they are still, even though Cody Rhodes is arguably getting the biggest babyface reaction on the entire roster, that they are playing the long game with him. They're playing the safe game, because I like this. Even though the fans, if you're a Cody supporter, would say you're ready for him to be champion, and Cody himself is, I think, more than ready and more than mature enough to handle the title reign, and he could easily run in and carry the company if he needed to. I really believe that he is that good, even though I don't like his babyface character. But it comes down to the fact that they are playing the safe game, that they've learned in the past that sometimes fans are enamored with a certain star for a short period of time, and it's the honeymoon phase, and it's short-lived, and they're trying to, I think, gauge how deep also the fans' support is for Cody. Is this kind of a one-off? Are they still just in the honeymoon phase? Like, where are they? How, they're trying to lay the foundation for fans that believed he came in, didn't lose a single match up until WrestleMania, got injured, beat Seth Rollins 3 times in a row, got injured, came back, won the Royal Rumble, immediately main evented WrestleMania, and many fans felt that he was kind of shoehorned in. And it seems like they're playing the long game with him, and it's interesting because he feels like he's white hot, and they're not striking. But that's because I think they have Seth Rollins to be his counterpart just below Cody, where fans would absolutely accept Seth as a champion, and Cody is playing the long game here, and probably going to eventually make his way back to Roman Reigns. That's, I think, where he's going to really finish the story. But okay, this is going to be a rare mention of Dana Brooke on the mailbag. I thought she was released because we've not seen her in ages, and what the hell is she doing in a non-title match against Ripley? Her only claim to fame was the 24/7 champion, and since that champion is no longer featured on Raw, what is the point of Dana Brooke being on the main roster? It would have easily made sense for her to be sent to NXT to get more TV time, because she has been one of the more underutilized female talents in WWE. She should be on NXT. She's a perfect candidate to be on NXT on a regular basis. Give her some regular work. I agree. And I mentioned that on my Raw review. Like, I have no idea what they're doing with Dana. Every time she comes out of the woodwork, she's there to just put over whoever's there. She's never a real threat. The fans never react loudly to her because they don't have a reason to, because they know that she's never going to win anything, at least the way they've presented her over the last how many years. She never gets any mic time. Like, there's just nothing there. She's just kind of this hollow, empty, blonde, just kind of your generic athletic, albeit very athletic woman. I mean, that's just the way that she's been presented. I'm not saying she's that on a personal level, just on a professional, on camera. Like, there's nothing there. So, yeah, I think that NXT could do her some real good. All right, this past week in Puerto Rico was absolutely great. This has got to be the best crowd reaction and interaction I've ever seen since probably the Montreal crowd for Elimination Chamber. I don't know what it is between the crowds here and in the States versus overseas, because to me the crowds overseas are more hyped for a pay-per-view than here in the States. Do you know why that is like this? I think the simple answer is they're starved. And what do I mean by that? Like, Puerto Rico hasn't had a pay-per-view or premium live event in 18 years. They were starving for one. Okay. These overseas crowds, number one, wrestling is part of the culture, especially in Puerto Rico. It's built into the fabric of the culture. Whereas here, it's kind of a sideshow in the States. Like, people are passionate about it, but it's not part of a lot of the culture. Like, it's taken more seriously there than here, I think, overall. And again, they haven't had an event in 18 years, so they were ready. And same thing overseas. Overseas doesn't get a whole. Generally, the crowds are louder because they don't get a whole lot of time to see WWE live, much less a pay-per-view. So I think that's part of the reason. Anyway, the Bad Bunny Damian Priest San Juan Street fight was really good and should have been the main event. I don't get why Triple H and Creative didn't book it that way. The spot that got me to cringe was when Damian did a Falcon Arrow Michinoku driver on Bad Bunny onto a wooden table that had some audio equipment. I really thought Bad Bunny was out for the rest of the match, then somehow he got the energy to continue and win this match with a freaking Puerto Rican Canadian destroyer. What celebrity does this on a pay-per-view? I'm just saying. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The dude has put in the work, and good for him. And he's shown toughness. I like it. I have nothing but respect for Bad Bunny for doing this. Do I still like the fact that he's coming in as a celebrity and beating the guys that are professionals on the roster and been here for years? That part of it still annoys me. But if I'm going to take this versus just a celebrity that comes in half-assed, and we've seen that so many times in the past, and just makes the wrestlers look like fools and then leave, no, I'll take this. But also, it was great seeing Carlito Caribbean Cool. He's in phenomenal shape and could probably get re-signed to be part of the LWO faction. Just a thought. He could. I mean, I actually don't know the future of Carlito. I would imagine that this is probably a one-off, and that he's not coming back in any part-time or full-time capacity. There's, he's not exactly a spring chicken anymore, and I think WWE would look at it as, well, he got that reaction because it's Puerto Rico, and it would be severely subdued in the States. He'd probably get a solid reaction, but it wouldn't be, it's not something that they could build around. But I wouldn't hate it. I would love it. I don't think Carlito had as big of a run as you'd imagine he could have had in WWE prior to him leaving. My God, how many years ago was that? All right, so a few interesting developments. We're here before you sign off. Solo almost spiking Jay during the 6-man tag. Interesting to see where this goes and what Roman has to say on Friday, because he has yet to publicly address the Usos' failure to win back the tag titles. The plot continues to thicken. Anyway, that's all. Signing off. Yes, I'm very much looking forward to your Veer Mahan report, I have to say, given some big things happening on Raw with them. So now, yeah, I mean, Roman Reigns hasn't addressed anything. I mean, he's been gone for 5 weeks. Is it maybe more? Is it 6 weeks now? Let's give him the benefit. 5 weeks, and it's time for Roman to come back. And hearing what he has to say is what all ears are going to be on Friday night. It's going to be, I think, a very highly rated edition of SmackDown because of Roman's return. Okay, let's get to, what do we want to get to? Let's get to Thomas Franco. And he writes in and says, from Montreal, 2 things I wanted to discuss. The first being, who will Roman's next 3 opponents be? It's been announced that Roman will be working with all of the next 3 PLEs, which is Night of Champions, Money in the Bank, and SummerSlam. And so far, there hasn't even been any hints yet, but we could get a program that starts as early as this Friday on SmackDown. I thought of a few opponents that could make sense for each PLE for Night of Champions. I think Bobby would make sense, Bobby Lashley. It's a big match that the Saudi investors would govern for, and Bobby is taking a loss could potentially open up a Hurt Business reunion if they wanted to do that in the future. I also think Bobby versus Roman has to happen at some point. Okay, before we get to the Money in the Bank, yeah, Bobby Lashley, how can he not, right? I think he's going to move out of the U.S. title picture. He probably He probably will, but maybe they do it as soon as Money in the Bank or soon as Night of Champions. But Bobby Lashley is definitely one of those three. I would agree with that. For Money in the Bank, are we all thinking it has to be Sheamus since they'll be in the UK? It makes sense, and we have not seen a Roman Sheamus program since late 2015. Give it a try, and I think it'll work. Yeah, it'll work because of the landscape, the environment you're in. But I think the general fan would look at this and go, all right, like, cool, but what about, what about, Jey Uso? Because Jey Uso at some point is going to face Roman. I don't hate it. It would make the crowd go crazy, but it would also tell the 98% of people at home, we've seen this before, right? We've seen this before. The hometown hero faces Roman Reigns. It's a massive reaction, but they lose. We've seen this before. We've seen this story. The crowd reaction is going to be fun if they do that, and Sheamus is a believable opponent for Roman Reigns. And I think Sheamus has beaten Roman Reigns before for the WWE title in 2015, I think it was. Am I wrong on that? 2016? I can't remember. It was around that time, 6 or 7 years ago. So they have history, and Sheamus has had a revival over the last year, especially with the matches with Gunther, re-showing his toughness, actually having a group that is fun to watch in the Brawling Brutes, and a name that actually has stuck instead of Fight Night and all that. Like, it is, Sheamus is ripe for that position. Is he going to beat Roman? Of course not. But you're right. It'll be a fun environment because of his heritage or his lineage. So, all right. For SummerSlam, this one's a toss-up. I think from a wrestling standpoint, it should be AJ Styles. Although I'm hearing a lot of reports mentioning Bad Bunny or Conor McGregor for Roman Reigns' SummerSlam opponent. Neither of them are going to win anyway, so to me, I'm fine with both as long as Conor takes training for WWE seriously like Logan Paul and Bad Bunny have done. Let me just say, I have no interest in seeing Conor McGregor versus Roman Reigns. I don't. The size differential would make me immediately check out. The size differential is too much for me. I know that he's an MMA fighter, a very talented one, and a legit badass, but he's not going to actually fight Roman Reigns. You're in a wrestling ring. So you're right. He would have to take it super seriously, and I heard about that. Can we keep the celebrities out of this? I've heard Bad Bunny too. Can we get... I understand the crossover audience, but I'm kind of done with the celebrity facing Roman Reigns, even though Logan Paul did an excellent job. The thing is, that those two aren't going to win. I mean, it's bad enough when you have an established guy like AJ Styles that I would advocate for at SummerSlam that isn't going to win. But there's like that small chance. You're like, well, man, I don't know, maybe there's a 5% chance. But with Bad Bunny or Conor McGregor, you're just like, there's no chance. I mean, it's just, why even bother outside of them just trying to get more eyeballs on the product, which I understand. But it's just, it's beyond a foregone conclusion. It's already written in stone and it hasn't even taken place. But I would advocate against those things. I really would. Bad Bunny, at least you'd know what kind of match you'd get. Decent match. He'd bump the hell out of himself and put his body on the line. That's great. I have no idea what Conor McGregor would do or how he would look or anything like that. I really advocate against that. But lastly, who takes the belt off of Gunther? I think they're going for Gunther to break the Honky Tonk Man's record as the longest reigning IC champion ever. So who are we thinking takes the belt off him? I think a great candidate, if pushed correctly, could be JD McDonough, who was recently drafted to Raw. Whoever it ends up being has to be a very established name or a well-presented talent, since Gunther looks pretty unstoppable at this moment in time. Thanks, Matt. That's all from me. Keep up the great work. Thomas from Montreal. Well, thanks, Thomas. And Gunther on Raw. Yeah, like there's a few candidates. JD McDonough, although you know more about him than I do in terms of body of work and believability. I'll take it at face value that he's a good candidate. Okay, I'm not gonna pretend that I know all these things. I don't. I rely on you guys. And by the way, the NXT review is coming, guys. It is coming. It's a bit delayed this week. So let's look at some potential candidates for the IC title on Raw now. Cody's obviously not going to be involved in that, I wouldn't imagine. Even though Cody and Gunther were the last two in the Rumble, and it was a precursor to a potential program down the line, I wouldn't hate that. But Cody's made no buts about it. Like, he is focused on finishing the story, and he kept emphasizing that until Brock once again detoured him this past week. So for him to go for after the IC title, all of a sudden he's satisfied with that. Like, so Cody's kind of out of that. Matt Riddle, possible, right? Matt Riddle is, unless Randy Orton comes back and gets in a program with Randy. Drew McIntyre, absolutely plausible, except for the fact that we don't know what the hell Drew McIntyre is doing. It seems as if his contract negotiations are not going well based on the fact that they haven't mentioned him at all, and he was supposed to be involved in the World Heavyweight Championship tournament. Not a good sign, okay? So assuming Drew is not returning, he's out. Let's see. I'm looking at the other names here. We have Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, but they're in a tag team right now. We have, I was going to say Braun Strowman and Ricochet, but they're in a tag team still, which I do not like them as a tag team. It's bizarre. Johnny Gargano, no. We have Riddick Moss, no. So really, I mean, you have Seth Rollins, but he's going to be World Heavyweight Champion. So Riddle maybe is a front runner to potentially beat Gunther, but right now there is nobody outside of, JD McDonough and Matt Riddle. I don't see anybody that is, you can have Shinsuke in the mix, but no real actual threats. Good question. And thanks for the email, man. Let's get to our next email. And this is from Dennis O'Brien. He says, hope the listeners are doing well. I thought Backlash was a mini WrestleMania. I enjoyed it immensely. Why the heck are they including SmackDown stars in the tournament for the Raw title? It's even baffling, even though I'm not surprised. Could they not have an 8-man tournament with the Raw stars like Cody, Seth, Finn, Nakamura, McIntyre, Omos, Priest, even a few of the tag champs? Have The Miz in there. I'm a fan of The Miz, to be honest, but he is there before McIntyre. Anyway, I think it will be Rollins versus Lashley at Night of Champions. Somehow Lesnar will cost Rhodes his chance at winning the title to set up Lesnar Rhodes at SummerSlam in a last man standing or unsanctioned match. Just my prediction for what it's worth. Thanks, Matt. Yeah, no problem. Dennis, good stuff. I mean, I have been baffled since the moment that Triple H took a right turn at the press conference and decided to tell us that, oh yeah, by the way, guys, SmackDown stars are going to be involved in this, even though I told you on Raw that this is an exclusive belt to Raw. Somehow the SmackDown stars are involved in a belt that's on Raw. Makes sense, right? They just wanted to have the biggest names possible, which again is an admission that they feel they don't have enough of star power on Raw. It's ridiculous. But anyway, I'm not going to go down that road again. You're right, though. The names you mentioned could have absolutely, outside of McIntyre, been a part of this tournament. And people wouldn't have said boo about it and said, oh, my God, these people. By the way, they never told us how those two triple threat contenders, those 6 men on Raw and SmackDown were chosen. How were they? Of course, no one's even explaining it. Why? How were they chosen? Out of a hat? I mean, I don't know. But as far as Cody and Lesnar, yeah, this looks like it's going to be a multi-program, a multi-match program. I mean, this is going to go past Night of Champions, I would imagine, into Money in the Bank. And I don't know all the way to SummerSlam. That's kind of a stretch. SummerSlam, I think, is what, like the first couple days of August or something. So that means you'd have to go another 3 months. I doubt it. I think it'll conclude at Money in the Bank. And, maybe that's when Cody gets back to Roman, and maybe it's Cody Roman at SummerSlam Part 2. Why not? Cody and Roman put on a hell of a match at WrestleMania, and they could do it again. I think that's absolutely possible. But as far as an unsanctioned match, here's the thing with unsanctioned matches. Whenever they announce that, it's hilarious to me that, like, this is a match, right? There's a referee in the ring. So, like, unsanctioned means it didn't happen, but it's happening. I don't know. I've always been a little bit getting into the definition of unsanctioned. It's always been a little bit confusing to me, but I understand the premise for it. You're trying to make it look like WWE is not liable for anything they do in this match, and they're trying to, from a legal standpoint, whatever you guys do to each other, we're not going to get we're not legally held to any kind of liability. So yeah, I mean, that could happen. But Lashley and Rollins at Night of Champions, absolutely. Honestly, as I said last night in my Raw review, you could really put any of those competitors in the ring against Rollins. There's not one in there that is not believable to potentially be in the match other than Austin Theory, simply for the fact that there is zero chance he has to win. Everybody else makes a small case that you could win. So I absolutely do believe that Rollins could be a real part of, or rather Rollins and whoever could be a really good match, because Rollins has good matches with nearly everybody. And so it's going to be a fun night of champions. It doesn't really matter who they put against Rollins. Rollins is essentially the new World Heavyweight Champion. So, all right, let's get to Chandler. And he says, so what do you want to talk about? All right, I'm deleting this email. Next, we have, no, all right, I'll get to it because you took the time to write in. Wow, that crowd in Florida was so dead. We need more Puerto Rico shows because that crowd was electric. I know I said this last week, but I'm going to Raw in July, and I hope that crowd is electric. Well, you're not going to get Puerto Rico. And here's the thing. Even if we did have shows in Puerto Rico on an even semi-regular basis, you're not going to match the crowd that we saw at Backlash. Why? Because when you have that much pent-up frustration and that much pent-up demand, and all of a sudden you start showing up semi-regularly, it becomes less meaningful, less special, and you're not going to, the enthusiasm will wane. You're not going to get that hot of a crowd. You'll still have hot crowds in Puerto Rico, even if you were there regularly, but not like that. That was a special crowd. So another thing I want to talk about is the World Heavyweight Championship tournament. I think they added SmackDown competitors because it makes it somewhat more interesting. And if someone from SmackDown wins, they'll probably come to Raw. Anyway, that's it for this week. Yeah, no, I understand why they did it, but they shouldn't have been able to do it. That's the point. The draft is now official. It's locked in. We were told as of May 8th, Monday Night Raw, that the rosters will become official. Okay, great. So if they're now official, how exactly, again, are people from SmackDown competing for a championship that's on Raw? Explain that to me. It's simply that they wanted to have the biggest names possible. And I'm sorry, you need to be held to your own damn rules. That's it. And they don't want to be held to their own rules and be handcuffed by the rules of the draft. Well, that's too bad, so sad. Okay, these are the rules of the draft. Abide by them or don't have a draft. And they already, without even the rosters being official, the ink wasn't even wet, as they say. The body wasn't even cold. I couldn't think of a third analogy. But they just couldn't even wait. And all of a sudden, it's like Vince McMahon came up with this. And Triple H is like, oh, fine. You know, I don't know. It's ridiculous. I don't care if that person comes to Raw. That's not the point. That actually doesn't make any sense either. Because then, like, why should somebody from SmackDown be able to compete for a belt that's exclusive to Raw? And if you're drafted to SmackDown, why are you having to go to Raw with a belt that you were told is on Raw, but you're supposed to be drafted to SmackDown? Well, what trumps what? You shouldn't even have to have this discussion. It's ridiculous. I don't care if the matches are quote unquote better, there's more star power. I don't care. I'll sacrifice that for simply abiding by your own damn rules. Oh, yeah. I know. I'm on a rant already. All right. Let's go to Rebecca. And Rebecca says, am I the only person who would like to see Otis versus Bronson Reed? If Otis could get his act together and his mind off Maxine, that'd be great. Yeah, it would be. Absolutely. Two men that have very similar builds. I would imagine that's the appeal here. Yes, it would be, except for the fact that they have, as you alluded to a little bit here, they've really redefined Otis back to a comedy character who's interested in becoming a model or interested in Maxine romantically. I don't know. They've redefined Otis as this kind of lovable dude, and instead of the killer that they started to define him as many months ago, which I thought was a nice move for him, a nice move for creative, nice change. Bronson Reed is being billed as the exact opposite. So you have this kind of lovable, jolly dude of Otis versus the killer of Bronson Reed. It's not exactly the best way to introduce this match. You'd want both of them to be kind of on equal footing, and Otis is just not there. I mean, I understand from a size perspective right now it's intriguing, but from where they are position-wise on the roster and how they're being defined, it's not an attractive match because Otis, based on how they defined them, Otis would be squashed in this match. It wouldn't be fun. But no, I understand it. And they could go to this, but the problem right now is how they have repackaged Otis. Bronson's not the problem. Otis is. Creatively. They could resurrect him, no problem. Redefine him. But as of this moment on May 10th, I wouldn't want to see that match because it wouldn't be the best it could be. Thank you so much, Rebecca. And let's get to I think this is our final email before we get to voicemails. And this one is from Ari, the Circus Eyes fan. I don't know if I pronounced that right, but we'll find out. And he says, "Hi, WWE Podcast. As usual, your podcast is always good and fun to listen." Well, thank you. You and Anthony talking about Roman possibly to be the new champion and how the crowd will react. I think it's interesting, but I also say, please don't. Yeah, no. I'm with you. I would. I'll speak for Anthony on his behalf. I would imagine he also would disagree that Roman should be also the world heavyweight champion. It's just fun to think about. That would take some serious creative balls on WWE's behalf. I don't think they're going to do it. I'm with you. Nor would I really want to see it. It's just more of like the dark side of me wants to see it. All right, Roman is good, and it was some fun for the fans for his time as champion, but the story needs to finish because now we've had a great time and new superstars are rising. Yeah, it's time, right? Like there will reach a time where it's going to this chapter on Roman being champion will close. I don't know when that is, but also wouldn't it behoove new stars to work with Roman as champion to help elevate them to that next level? You know what I mean? So the case actually works in the opposite. The argument, rather, works in the opposite way, where keeping Roman as champion may actually help build new stars. Just the thought. I'm not advocating for Roman to be champion forever, but there is a counter argument there. Last thought, I was thinking about possible, maybe, just maybe, what if Roman was to lose at Night of Champions in 999 days? Well, here's the problem. Roman at the event of Night of Champions would have already reached his 1,000th day. That is the 1,000th day. So he could lose on his 1,000th day. But here's evidence against that. Number one, Michael Cole has mentioned already on Raw. Was it Michael Cole? On SmackDown, rather. That Roman has now another milestone in Pedro Morales, who is at 1,028 days. He wouldn't have mentioned that if Roman wasn't going to succeed that. So, and also, I very much doubt that they would get to 1,000 days only to have Roman lose on his 1,000th day. I don't know. Doesn't seem right with WWE booking. But all right, when someone like Jey Uso costs him kick to Roman's face, I'm not sure what you mean. Are you saying, Jey Uso would cost Roman by kicking him in the face? It really, here's how it could end. It could end up with Jey finally snapping. It depends how long they're going to tell the story of the bloodline breaking and snapping, and specifically Jey. If this was a normal, quote-unquote normal storyline with a semi-popular group or semi-successful group, the heel champion's done a decent job, I would say this breakup's coming sooner than later. But with a bloodline group, a storyline that they've had that has been generally nearly every week captivating, well acted, well scripted, and the money and ratings that this group and storyline has drawn, they're going to milk this longer than probably fans want it to happen, because once the bloodline breaks, then they go their separate ways, and you're ending a storyline that has brought you so much success. WWE, this is not your normal average storyline, and it's a cash cow right now with Roman and the Usos and the merch and everything else. No doubt about it that they're not going to just get rid of this quickly. And nor should they, because there's a lot of story to tell, a lot of teasing to be done before Jey finally does snap and maybe cost Roman a championship match. Maybe he does. Possible. I don't think it happens at Night of Champions. Let me just say that. All right. We do have one more email that came in as I was reading that email. And this is MJ from Australia. He says, "Hey, Matt, MJ from Australia here, mate. Love your work. Thanks, to keep it up." Well, thanks, MJ. What is it with you guys in Australia? You guys are, really, I did not know I had that many fans over there. Okay. All the way out. How many miles is Australia from upstate New York? Can somebody Google map that for me? That's got to be 10,000 miles or something. So pretty damn cool. All right. So you say, I had a thought re-legitimizing the World Heavyweight Championship as not a secondary title and have a double benefit of having showing Roman as beatable to give them an option to take the WWE Universal off him later in 2023. You've spoken about a 1% theory that Roman wins the World Heavyweight Championship. But what if he is in just the World Heavyweight Championship match versus Seth to lose? He is due on SmackDown on Friday and could demand or fight or injure someone to get his way into the semifinal SmackDown main event as a triple threat, and he wins and faces Seth. Jeddah would want to pay for a pay for a match with Roman in it, surely, which isn't currently organized. His titles wouldn't be on the line. It could be booked as him trying to collect all the main titles in WWE and retain his spot as the head of the table. Seth is the only championship match opponent to not lose to Roman. He won via DQ during his run. Hence, they could believably give Seth the victory over Roman, either clean or wonky, immediately giving Seth and the World Heavyweight Championship relevance as, quote, equal to the top title. Am I crazy fantasy booking, or is it plausible? Plausible, MJ. Definitely plausible. Is it likely? That's a different question. Likely, no. Plausible, yes. So let me talk about the positives of this. Having Roman in the title match you couldn't have a more clear babyface and heel in this match. Jeddah would absolutely play along. The crowd would be electric for Seth, no doubt. And Seth and Roman have a lot of unfinished business. They work very well together, and Roman has a very poor record against Seth in championship matches. That's all true. That's really good. And you're right, Jeddah, they will do anything or pay anything to have whatever match card they want, and it really comes down to that. They're heavily influenced by whatever they want, and that could happen. It could. I'd give it like a 1 in 4 chance. That's not a bad idea. So those are the positives. Here are the reasons why it probably wouldn't happen. Number one, if you're going to have a program with Seth and Roman, the next time they meet, whenever that is, I wanted a full-fledged story. I don't want it just a one-off like they did at Royal Rumble in 2022. That was a one-off, and we didn't get any follow-up to that, 18 months later. And if this was to happen, it would be another one-off with Seth and Roman, thereby kind of taking away a potential WrestleMania main event by giving it away in the middle of the year here. And you could still do it at WrestleMania if they wanted to go that road. But if Mr. Hollywood comes out, then it's Rock and Roman at Mania, then maybe there's a stronger case, because then who the hell knows when you get to Seth and Roman, barring a trade. So, and also, if you did this, that would mean that Roman Reigns loses, and he hasn't lost a singles match. He lost the tag title. He lost the tag team match on New Year's Eve, I believe it was, with John Cena and Kevin Owens. Was it Kevin Owens? I think it was. And so he lost that match, but it was a tag team match, and he wasn't the one being pinned. So if Roman was to lose this, presumably against Seth, then that means his undefeated streak goes away. Now his title streak would stay intact because the Universal wouldn't be on the line. Universal/WWE wouldn't be on the line, but his undefeated streak goes away, and there is some value and liquidity in that too, that I don't think gets enough attention, that Roman hasn't lost a singles match, a one-on-one, since, before SummerSlam of 2020. So there's that argument. When it comes down to it, would I ultimately do this? Probably not. And the strongest reason for me is I want a proper multi-month program with Seth and Roman. It's just deserving of that, not just these weird one-offs with them, and then they don't follow up on anything because they can't, because they're on separate brands. So that's what I think. But I could see them doing it. Great question. All right. Thanks, MJ. and let's get to those voicemails. Hope you're ready. Let's do it.
WWE Podcast World, this is DJ Kuzmo back at it again on your Mailbag show. Records you live on a Wednesday morning. And let's get to your favorite show to come in every single week on the Mailbag. And I'm talking about the Veer Mahaan Report. Now, the Veer Mahaan Report took place this past Monday night on Monday Night Raw. And we did get an appearance of the Indus in a backstage vignette. And Jinder Mahal says, from the shadows, we emerge to shake the very foundation of Monday Night Raw. Yes, yes, and yes, this is what I'm talking about. This is the type of message, this is the type of threat that I want to see these guys of the Indus pose to the roster of Monday Night Raw. That's right, to Ricochet and Braun Strowman, to the Alpha Academy, and to every single body on the roster. That's right, even the tag team champions of Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. You better watch your back because the Indus are on the move. So that was the backstage vignette for Jinder Mahal as he's hyping up their debut of the Indus on Monday Night Raw. But now, let's get to Twitter. Let's get to what Veer Mahaan had to say these past couple of days on Twitter. On May 7th, none other than my guy Veer Mahaan says, looking forward to going up against teams dumb enough to agree to getting into the ring with us. Oh, and for those talking smack recently, now start paying attention. That's for all you trolls out there on the internet that always says, oh, he's coming. This is different this time because Triple H is in control of this, I guess you could say, creative direction of my guys, the Indus. So that was Veer Mahaan saying that on May 7th. And on May 6th, on Twitter, Veer Mahaan says, lights, camera, action, the Fear return to Raw. And of course, this was taken as he was doing a little photo shoot. Like the look of my guy Veer Mahaan wearing those nice power suits as he is doing his photo shoot, getting ready for their awesome appearance, their awesome debut on Monday Night Raw. Now, with that being said, this, my friends, is the beginning of getting into Phase 2, as Jinder Mahal says that in Phase 2 that he wants to see himself, and of course Veer Mahaan, and of course Sanga draped in gold. Now, whatever that is, I can't wait to see that. So with that being said, before I go over my time, I hope y'all have a blessed week. This is your guy DJ Kuzmo. This is your boy DJ Kuzmo. Have a blessed week. Stay loose, my friends. Be kind to one another, and peace.
All right, well, DJ, I'm genuinely excited for you. Now you finally have something to sink your teeth into after weeks and weeks of the Indus being MIA. The hope was that they were getting prepared for the main roster, and that's exactly what we got this past week, albeit in a vignette. We'll take it, given that they were just completely invisible the last month or longer. So, yeah, now they're on Raw, and we'll see who they target. I'm imagining going to be a babyface team. Maybe they go right to Kevin and Sami, maybe. If they do, that would mean that they're probably not going to win the tag titles right away. You know, I think Sami and Kevin need time to breathe as champions. I don't think they'll have a super long reign as champion because both of them as single stars are still a lot of fun. So because they climbed the mountain, they achieved what they need to, and now, hey, over the next by SummerSlam, I would imagine, even at SummerSlam, that Kevin and Sami probably drop the belts and then maybe go their separate ways without actually, wanting to have one of them turn on the other, which would be a revelation, wouldn't it? So, but as far as the Indus goes, it was great to see. They feel legit as a team, and hopefully this coming Monday we get a longer vignette at the very least. I don't want them to fade away where we don't see anything from them. I hope it's continuous. It's the key with this group, especially with them being new to most fans outside of Jinder Mahal, is consistency and character development before they even get in the ring, because we need to know who and what they are and what they stand for, what they want, before the fans can get emotionally invested. Before they step foot in the ring, we need to hear and see what they're about. And then when they get in the ring, we'll actually react verbally, which is what they want, one way or the other, make our decisions based on their characters, their goals, their morals, all that, which clearly they're being billed as heels, but you still want to be emotionally invested, especially as they're new, right? For most people, Sanga and Veer Mahaan are new faces for most people, right? So, all right. Good job, DJ. And I heard that from last week, I heard seagulls. This week, it's replaced by police sirens. So I'm imagining you're not in a and as enviable of a place as you were last week on the beach. And it sounded like you're on the street or something. I don't know, but hope you enjoy your day and week. And let's get to our next one.
Hey, it's Kyle from Baltimore. So I wanted to talk about Backlash last night, and it was a really good show. I enjoyed it. Start to finish, it was really entertaining. The crowd was really hot for almost every match last night. This team match I want to talk about that really surprised me, involving crowd reaction. It really just one. It was Io and Bianca. People badly wanted Io as the champion, and I would have Io as champion too, because Bianca's been a very boring, dull champion, but the crowd badly was behind Io Sky last night. It was like, wow, should they put the title on Io and Bianca's reign? I think they should have a long time ago, because Bianca's been a very boring, dull champion. So, but after that performance from Io, they need to do more with her as a singles wrestler again, like they did, like she was in NXT. So hopefully that's to come, and she needs to be champion very soon. Maybe she'll win Money in the Bank this year. Who knows? But there's that. The other thing was Omos and Rollins. I'm glad that Rollins won. That match was very entertaining. I was not expecting it, but I knew that how good Rollins was as a wrestler. But you never know with, how his chemistry with Omos was going to be. But I was it was surprisingly good of an Omos match because of Rollins. But glad that Rollins won. He needs to be World Heavyweight Champion. And so those two matches really were fun. Overall, the show as a whole was really fun as a whole, but I enjoyed those two matches in particular. But what do you think about the whole Io Sky push as a singles wrestler after that performance and reaction from her last night? But that's it for a call. Bye.
Hey, Kyle, I'm glad you brought up Bianca and Io again. You made me think of something where the crowd was super behind Io. We all know that. I mean, like, unexpectedly hot behind Io. And I wonder if it's more that... Oh, is it... Let me pose this question to you and just everybody in general. Was the crowd that night more interested in seeing Io capture the women's championship, or were the fans collectively just more interested in seeing Bianca just dropping the belt? And what I mean by that more specifically is, are fans not even going to care who she drops the belt to, and just they want her to drop the belt? That I think is, if I was to guess, more of the answer than, oh my God, people are suddenly super emotionally invested into Io Sky. I'm going to venture to guess that the bigger reason behind the reaction is that people are just done with Bianca as champion more than they want to see Io Sky as champion. I mean, it could have been anybody in there. Maybe not anybody, but do you know what I'm saying? Because they haven't done exactly a whole lot of character development with Io. I mean, little to none. So I'm going to venture to guess it's that. And I will say this about Bianca. As talented as she is in the ring, her personality is, like you said, it's just been extremely boring for a long period of time now. And I cannot scream heel turn enough. But if they don't do it and they refuse and they say we're pushing forward regardless, well, then they're going to have a situation on their hands where fans are just going to organically turn against Bianca. I would venture to guess that fans are going to start organically turning on her already. And I don't think it's going to be a Puerto Rican, response from town to town, but I think it's starting already, where you're going to start to hear less of a reaction, which will eventually turn to boos. So either WWE is going to turn her heel or the fans are going to do it. But either way, she's going to be heel. She needs to. Or if you don't want her heel, then have her drop the belt. For the love of God. It's just time. That's all. They've just done a bad job of managing her character since she's been champion. That's all. All right, next one.
Hey, Matt. This is Robert from the WWE Ringside Podcast. We are now through Backlash, and we're looking forward to Night of Champions, so I kind of wanted to throw out a match card that I think should happen anyway. This is before Raw, so I don't know anything that's really happening on Raw yet. But, so I think we're going to get Shayna and Ronda versus Liv and Raquel for the Women's Tag Team Championship. I think we're going to get Riddle versus Gunther for the IC title. I think we might get Rhea versus Bianca Belair in a title unification for the women's title. Rollins versus Edge for the World Heavyweight Championship finals. Lesnar versus Rhodes. And Roman versus Jey Uso in the main event. So that is what I think should happen on Night of Champions. What are your thoughts on that? That's all I got for you this week. Have a good one. Bye.
Hey, Robert, not a bad card that you lined up there. Not a bad card at all. I'm, the Jey Uso Roman Reigns match. The only reason I'm thinking it's not going to happen is because that's a match that you want to continue to push out forward and tell a story. But then if Roman's not competing against Jey, who the hell is he competing against? Because that would signal the end of the bloodline, presumably. And I don't think they're going to do that in, 3 weeks' time. Right? I don't think they will anyway. That said, your other matches with Riddle against Gunther, yes. And you know what? I would also say maybe Big E. What about a returning Big E against Gunther? There's a hell of a matchup. People aren't talking about Big E. I know that he's out there too. He's been injured for a year. But with the New Day on Raw, WWE will likely, sadly, put him back with the New Day, but also in an Intercontinental Championship match against Gunther. If Riddle doesn't step up, sure. How about that? Ronda Rousey and Shayna Baszler against Liv and Raquel, sure, fine. I say that apathetically because I'm not into Raquel and Liv as champions at all. I think they're actually obnoxious. They don't make me. They don't give me the warm fuzzy feeling in my stomach. Seeing them as a tag team is really, really just. I don't know. It's just obnoxious. I don't know how else to describe it. They almost are intentionally trying to sabotage their babyface characters. I'm not a fan. So if Raquel and Liv drop the belts to Shayna and Ronda, hey, sign me up. Really. Sign me up, because that would legitimize the championships further, which WWE needs always help with the women's tag belts. And it would make me hate Raquel and Liv less. So resent them, or I don't know what it is. Anybody else get that feeling with Raquel and Liv? It's like they're trying too hard, or they try to have forced chemistry. It just comes off awkward, and I don't know. They've been really obnoxious on TV. It just hasn't worked for me. They're better off as single stars, but if they want to create a women's division, then I will sacrifice them to the women's division of the tag team anyway, because I'm always complaining the WWE doesn't have a women's tag division. So I will sign them to a tag team if they want to go that road. But babyface, I don't know. Omos, or rather, you had Seth Rollins versus Edge. Yeah, I have no problem with that. And they could call back to the history that those two have. There's a long history. I believe Edge won the final blow-off, if I'm not mistaken. They could absolutely do that. And there's no chance of Edge winning. None. But still, you could have Seth Rollins in a great match with Edge because those two work well together. I think that's very plausible. Definitely. Alrighty, let's get to our next one. Thanks, Robert.
Hey, Matt, it's Devin here. Hope you're well. What's Backlash? I enjoyed it. I loved the Bianca match. That was a great showing. But the thing I want to talk about, and it's probably more of a rant, is the crowd. Again, we've had two pay-per-views outside of America in front of an audience who really appreciates what this is all about. Just bear with me as I give you a bit of back info here. So here in Australia, we have called V8 Supercars, which is a motorsport series. one of the toughest in the world, probably after NASCAR. Now, a few years ago, they decided to expand into Bahrain, Abu Dhabi, and China, and there was no one in the seats. There was no one watching the race there. It was as if they were just in an empty stadium, for instance. Now, in Australia, 25% of those drivers in the series are from New Zealand, and yet they don't go to New Zealand to have a round of racing over there. So what really annoys me is that these series, and I'm also alluding now to WWE, are not going to the places where the crowd appreciates it, where the crowd invests in the love for this. Instead, they go to places like, in the case of motorsport here, to Abu Dhabi, to Bahrain, in the case of WWE, to Saudi Arabia, where I don't feel the crowd really are as invested at all. I mean, clearly it's all about money, but it just sucks. I mean, WWE should go more to Mexico, to the Latino countries, because, 30 to maybe even 50% of the WWE roster is Latino, is Mexican. They're just totally missing a trick here. Elimination Chamber, Canada, massive crowd. They need to go to Canada more. They need to go into Central America more. They could even possibly go to the UK a bit more too, because I believe the crowds here are pretty good. I don't know. It just shows when we go to these other countries like Canada, Puerto Rico, even Mexico, when they go to, the crowd are going to be electric. And that's what makes you watch it as a viewer on television. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say. Thanks again for a great show. Cheers. Bye.
Bevan, what's up, buddy? Are you recruiting a bunch of people down there to listen to the show? Because you were like one of the first Australian listeners, and then all of a sudden, all these people come on and that are from Australia. It's I'm just like, I bet you Bevan's behind this, right? But I think you answered your own question. Why don't they go to these places? You answered it. I don't need to tell you. Money. I know that you look at it as fan service and appreciation. They respect. First and foremost, as cold as this sounds, but it's reality, they are driven by money. They're a for-profit organization. They're in the business of making money, period. And the reason they go to Saudi Arabia, despite all of the bad press and scandals going on there in the government and them ridiculously a couple of years ago with, who was it, Lacey Evans and Natalia celebrating the first ever women's match in Saudi Arabia. It's like celebrating, somebody being able to drive a car for the first time in the country. It's like, why are we celebrating this again? It's 2021 or whatever it was. I forget what year. It was a couple of years ago. We're all supposed to celebrate that it took this long for women to be treated as human beings. And by the way, they still don't have the equal rights as men in Saudi Arabia, but that's another issue. I'm not a proponent of celebrating things that should already be happening and should have been happening for a long time. And it's this big moment. Okay. I know I'm zeroing in on that one thing specifically, and I'm going off track. So let me get back on. They don't go to these places that often because of simply money. It's expensive to travel there. Okay. They have to, there's a lot of fees and expenses that are incurred, especially when you have to cross the Atlantic Ocean or Pacific Ocean. Like, it's a longer travel time, a longer return time. Everything is more expensive doing this. And often WWE doesn't bring in the same amount of revenue as if they did their typical spots. So I understand why they do it. At the same time, to your argument, if they're always telling us that they're a global brand, well, then take it global, right? Because the crowd reaction we heard in Puerto Rico is certainly an indication that there's pent-up frustration. There's pent-up demand around the world for WWE. And the fans like yourself in Australia and the UK, which they've gotten a little bit better about, and Mexico and things, they are, I feel for you guys because you're big fans, loyal fans, and yet you're like, why the hell don't they come here? I'm sorry, bro. It comes down to simply money. While there are fans there, they have a big marketing and research team that probably tells them, hey, if we went here, here's how much we'd make. If we went here, look how much we'd make here. Do I think they'll go to Australia eventually for a PLE? Probably. In Melbourne. I know they've done it before, haven't they? I feel like they've done this before. I'd have to Google it. It's not like they've never been there, but it's been quite some time. So my point is that I feel your pain, and it also is, the other countries are embarrassing the United States. I mean, we are being embarrassed by the enthusiasm, the passion that these other crowds have. It shows you the potential that a crowd could have on a product, and it's immense. It's more impactful than you realize when you see the potential of what a crowd can do. And now the thing is also the U.S. audience is kind of desensitized to WWE events. They run the same cities every 6 months. You get a Raw, then you get a SmackDown, then you get a house show. If you're lucky, you get a PLE. And they've, same thing with Canada, although they don't go there nearly enough either. Montreal seems to be one of their favorite places to go, but outside of that, they don't really venture around Canada. Yeah, man, it's all about the Benjamins. It's all about that money, right? It really is. It comes down to that, sadly. But alrighty, thank you, brother. Let's get to our next one.
Hey, Matt, Mike from Connecticut calling in. And 2 points I wanted to make. First one, I had a analogy that came to my mind. Real quick, I'm the drummer of the group, of the guys I hang out with. And I always, fascinated by guitar playing, and specifically the quick kind of guitar playing, like Eddie Van Halen or Stevie Vai. It always fascinated me how fast those guys can move their fingers and just make the sounds that they do. And my buddies who play the guitar, they're like, well, no, it's not that difficult, and if you do this and this and this. I'm like, you're kind of ruining it for me. Like you know too much information. That's the kind of analogy I like to make about, fans like you and I. I've been watching wrestling since, I saw WrestleMania 4 on closed circuit television back in 1988. So that's how far back I go. But we know too much is my point, and you're a real good example of it, because you have a really good way of breaking it down and figuring it out before things happen. Guys like you and I and the rest of your broadcast team, we're too spoiled to the fact that we kind of figure out things more quicker than maybe your average fan, where the surprise element is it's almost gone. Like you always use the idea of, like, this person's not going to win, but every so often, wait a minute, they give you that you're on the edge of your seat, like maybe they might do it, but, and we, the idea is to lose the reality of the situation and to get caught up in it, and that's the idea of it. You and I are the guitar players of the band. That's the way I look at it. Secondly, your guys on the WTF broadcast team, I love their show, but they went down a list of the whole draft, and I don't know what was going on there, but they literally mentioned every person who was drafted, and they got it all backwards. As an example, they used Fire, that the Street Profits are going from SmackDown to Raw, and that Edge is going from SmackDown to Raw. What do you feel about that? And they had intelligent conversations about it. Like, yeah, that's Fire, or, that's trash, or, Lunchable. Drew McIntyre going from from SmackDown to Raw. And they got the entire list backwards, and they had a very intelligent conversation of how they felt about it. So I was really thrown off about that. So, one to throw, your boys under the bus, but I'm sure I can't be the only one who recognized that. So, just wanted.
Hey, Mike. Hope you're doing well, buddy. First of all, I did not know that. I didn't get a chance to listen to their latest episode. We have so much content. I just trust a lot of our co-hosts to just, we publish our stuff, and then, as much as I can, I listen to it. It's just, with so much content being pumped out, it's nearly impossible. My own content on top of it. But, hey, I'd cut them some slack. It's, and the reason I say that is because I'm imagining that they probably just Googled full draft results, and whatever they looked at was probably a list that wasn't put together too concisely, right? I saw, in their defense, I did see a couple lists that were very confusing, and it wasn't straightforward. It was like, here was where they originally were, here's where they're going, but here's where they could go. Like, there were lists that made it difficult to decipher where the hell people were going. So it's not surprising, actually, while you're looking at it going, that got this totally backwards. There's a lot of websites out there that were very not clear, foggy about, someone going from here to here, but then here's their original brand, and here's where they drafted it, but here's where they were the last time there was a draft. There were a lot of that, and they probably just pulled it off. I'm imagining a site that was one of those more confusing ones. Now, to your question or your insight analogy about us being guitar players, I'd rather be a drummer. I have to say, I've always, imagined myself a drummer if I were ever in a band. But I have about as much musical talent as my 2-year-old. So unfortunately, yeah, that's never a reality for me. I'm cut out to just sit here and talk wrestling, I guess. But hey, here's the thing. As far as us knowing too much, the average so obviously every fan in the world that watches pro wrestling knows what it is, right? Everybody knows what it is. You and I, though, have seen so much of it, and other fans too. Obviously, there's fans that have been watching it much longer than you and myself combined. But when you get to a certain point, you can kind of see the way things are going, and it does become more difficult to be surprised. So sure, we understand the product more, can see things coming more. We dig into the strategy. People that want to dig into the strategy, the ones listening to the podcast, you're not going to have most casual fans that watch a Raw here and there or dig into wrestling podcasts. Obviously, I don't think that's our audience. But I think it evolves from the expectation of being surprised all the time and more into... You're watching through the lens of appreciation, or the more of the wrestling, the physical aspect of it. Because even though we can dig down and see what's going on behind the scenes, or in our minds come up with this just deep analysis of what's happening, which is obviously what this podcast, or I do anyway, I think it evolves into that more of a looking through what they're trying to do, trying to figure it out. It never gets boring, though, even though we have fully pulled the curtain back. It's a testament to this sport, this art form, that even though we all know what it is, and those especially that have a podcast or are longtime fans, that even though we know exactly what it is, and a lot of times we can see things coming, and a lot of times I complain, no doubt, and a lot of fans complain, you know what we do, though? We keep watching. We keep watching. Why? If something is that pulled back, that exposed, we know too much, then why the hell do we keep watching, right? It's because this art form is so damn entertaining, and when it's good, it can be really good. Even to the most hardcore fan, you can have those moments that still give you goosebumps, right? Those moments of reality, when reality and this fantasy world cross, and you see, you can see the real emotion from the stars, what it means in the moment. You can dig in and analyze whether those emotions are real or not. Oh, wait, these two wrestlers have beef with one another. How's it going to play out in the match? Like, we get into it and look at it through a different lens as we get older. Our interest in it sometimes grows, even though we've pulled the curtain completely back. It's like, for example, it's like having a movie review or movie critic. They've seen hundreds, if not thousands of movies, right? And everybody knows that when they're watching a movie, it's not real. Most movies, right? Every time you watch a movie, especially movie critics, that's their life, that's their job for decades. Yet they still review movies and do a damn good job of it. And they're some of the most renowned movie critics. I mean, we all know who they are and who they were, right? Siskel and Ebert come to mind, right? But that's kind of the same thing. They get more skilled at really being able to dissect the movie, and people value their opinions more than just a casual fan often, because they, in their minds, they know what makes a good movie. So anyway, I hear you, and good point though. So, all right, let's get to our next one.
Hey Matt and the podcast, it's New York Kyle again. I'm at work again. So I was listening to your Backlash review. You're wondering how long since Carlito's been here. I have an answer for you. I did my research. I was curious too, but I forgot also. Back at the Royal Rumble 2021, he came back in it for a little bit, for a big pop. And then the Raw after Mania the next night, he actually teamed with Jeff Hardy in a tag team match against Elias and Jackson Riker. Yeah. Remember that tag team? Remember that guy before we got released? Yeah. That was a thing. And he had that match because basically WWE was planning on giving him like a 3-week trial run to see how he would do. But the second and third week he wasn't there. They kind of just were like, "No, we don't need you," I guess. I don't know. And they never gave him a full contract. That's what happened. And also, for one reason why he teamed with Jeff Hardy, Jeff Hardy's contract got extended because of injury. So basically when Matt Hardy left to go to AEW, Jeff couldn't go with him yet. That's why he was still there a little longer. But yeah, that's your answer. I know I'm doing that a lot lately every week. I've been just giving you a little answer to your questions. It's just, I don't know. It's just fun researching this stuff. I just enjoy it. But yeah, that's all for this week. Backlash is awesome. I love the street fight. That's it. So yeah, peace.
Kyle, you know what I'm going to start doing? I'm not going to ask any more questions. I'm just going to act like I know the answers so I don't sound stupid on my own show. That's what I'm going to start doing. I'm just not going to ask any more rhetorical questions or anything else. That way you can't go and research and go, "Hey, dude, it's this, it's that," right? No more. From now on, everything I say is just gospel, okay? There's no more questions to be asked. That way I can't look stupid unless you research everything I say, which is more difficult to do. So, but hey, thanks, Kyle. No, I appreciate that. And somebody else brought that to my attention too about Carlito. I honestly forgot completely. It didn't make a big impact with me, but now that you say it and I heard it from some other people, I vaguely remember that, at least the Rumble. I don't remember the next night on Raw. Probably because Jackson Riker is a name that most of us probably will never utter again in our lives. But that to me is it is important because I thought he wasn't in WWE since he left in like the mid 2000s or late 2000s. Really, I thought it was like 10 years at least 10, 15 years. And people have asked me do I think he's going to make a comeback? No, I don't. No. I think it was a one-off in Puerto Rico. But thank you, Kyle, for that. And no more questions. No more questions. All right, let's get to the next one.
Alex, the French guy here, your current European champion. What a backlash moment. That was a good pay-per-view. That was a good PLE. I was not super convinced about the finish. Cody Rhodes pinning Brock Lesnar this way, but I understand that you want to protect Brock Lesnar as much as possible. But you also want to establish Cody Rhodes as a top main eventer, so having him beat Brock Lesnar is a good thing. He looked like a legit badass at the beginning of the fight when he jumped on Brock Lesnar. So ruthless. This was really nice, but the end of the match I didn't find it super interesting. The pinning was, I don't know, you do that with mid-card or something. I don't like this. However, I know that I know you, Matt, you are really, really happy about the segment on Raw this Monday, where I thought directly about you when Brock Lesnar took Cody Rhodes. He passed out, not really, but he passed out, and Brock Lesnar took Cody Rhodes and said, "What do you want to talk about? What do you want to talk about?" So I directly thought about you, Matt. saying that it's not logical. Why Cody Rhodes said to the public, what do you want to talk about? So I'm sure Brock Lesnar addressed this thing about the Cody Rhodes. So yeah, I thought Matt, I think you are really happy about this line about Brock Lesnar. That's all for me for this week. See you next week, guys.
Hey, Alex. I'm glad you brought that up. I didn't bring that up in my Raw review with Brock Lesnar screaming in Cody's face. What do you want to talk about? Like mocking him, and it should be mocked. It should be. That's the one maybe fault in Cody's promo ability. Okay, it is his just incessant need to try to get this over. It's not going to get over. It can't get over. It can't get over because it's not a question that people can answer or cheer. There's nothing they can say. It's not sing-along time. And you hear it in his weekly plug for this thing. He'll mention the name of the city. He'll say, Indianapolis. And they'll cheer that because, woo, we're from Indianapolis. We love ourselves, right? Everyone does that. But then when he says, what do you want to talk about? Like he's being cute with this punchline, and it's super annoying to hear because he's trying to get it over, but everyone just kind of goes like silent. There's no collection of a response because people are look around like I don't know, man. You tell us, like you're on the mic, and what am I supposed to say to this? Until somebody somehow comes up with a clever way to respond to this, and then maybe it can get over. It's gonna continue to fall flat. I mean, mentioning the city is always a cheap pop. You take the mention of the city out, the line on it by itself is not getting over because it's not a sing-along type of a response. There's no coherent response. It's an open-ended question. I've said this, but Cody continues to push it even though it gets no response. The fans go, I don't know, yay. Like, what are they supposed to say? What are they supposed to just generically cheer it but not actually answer it? They're just supposed to kind of do a general cheer. Why? Why? If you're trying to interact with the crowd and the crowd is kind of handcuffed, knowing that their voice is going to get drowned out if somebody screams, Brock Lesnar, I want you to talk about Brock Lesnar. Well, it's frustrating as a fan because I know the live crowd is sitting there going, well, I'm not going to say anything specific. Is it meant to be rhetorical? If it's meant to be rhetorical, am I supposed to cheer it? I don't cheer rhetorical questions. If I'm not, what's the proper response? If I was to ask Cody, if I had him on the show, I'd be like, hey, bro, like, you say this. I know what you're trying to do. I get it. You're having your own little tagline. I understand the business behind it. But I would say to him, like, well, what is the proper response to this? If I'm a fan of the crowd, what am I supposed to say to this? It doesn't lend itself to any kind of interaction with the crowd. It's just, I'm thinking like every week, I'm like, all right, he finally got the hint last week and the week before and the week before that. He's finally going to drop it. And the first thing the mother effer says on the mic, so Cleveland, what do you want to talk about? And he also, the way he says it is also super annoying to me. Like when he gets into the rest of his other 99% of his promo, I'm down. He's good usually. I mean, he's very good on the mic, but this little cute beginning to every promo doesn't need to happen. And he's trying to make it cute, and he's like, "Oh, pay attention to this and the inflection in my voice. So what do you want to talk about? Isn't that a clever way to open a promo?" No, it's not. It's stupid. Why? Because you're in front of 15,000 people that don't know how to collectively respond to you. You can't. Oy. All right. It's kind of akin to when everyone, no matter who it is, Triple H himself, even the second he comes out, he was out for like 3 weeks in a row, 4 weeks in a row because of the draft and the World Heavyweight Championship being introduced. He's like, welcome to Monday Night Raw. Like, yeah, no crap, right? Like, duh. The announcers are not welcome us to Raw. Why does everyone who comes out first that cuts a promo has to welcome us to Raw? It doesn't make sense. No kidding. I know what program I'm watching. I don't know. Little things like this annoy me, but okay. Now you got me fired up. And we are at, is this the final voicemail? Yeah, here comes the final one. Let's do it.
Hey, Matt, this is Randy from LA. Just have a couple thoughts that I wanted to throw out there tonight. Real quick, first thought that I wanted to throw out there is I am so happy. I am so happy watching Backlash and watching the crowd turn on Bianca Belair. If you remember from my very first phone call or voicemail, the very first thing I said on the show was that I can't stand her character. And it just feels so good. It was so good to watch the crowd turn on her. And if you remember, a few weeks ago, I called a little bit after WrestleMania and talked about how that crowd, even the crowd at WrestleMania, was ready to turn on her. We were ready to cheer Asuka, and yet, Bianca came out with the victory. But just felt really good, and just thankful to see that the crowds are starting to voice what most of us feel about Bianca Belair and her character. And then the other thing that I wanted to just throw out there is there's something that's really bugging me, really bugging me. And it bothered me a few weeks ago when they had the number one contenders match for the Raw Women's Championship. And they threw out, I think it was Mia Yim and Piper Niven going after the number one contendership. And I think Io Sky won. And it just felt totally like out of place. Like, what did those women do to deserve to be in that tournament? And then this week, you have The Miz in the tournament to be the heavyweight champion of the world. If you want this title to feel credible, if you want this title to be taken seriously, if you want this new champion to be taken seriously, how are you going to put Miz in the tournament? Miz, who just lost to Snoop Dogg and George Kittle at WrestleMania. Miz that took one punch from Snoop Dogg, laid on the ground, an impromptu rock bottom or the people's elbow from Snoop Dogg. Come on, man. How are we supposed to take this championship seriously when you have people like The Miz in the tournament? All right. Sorry. Just had to get that off my chest. Thanks, man. Have a great week.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're right, Randy. First of all, hope you're doing well. And it doesn't make sense. It never makes sense how they sometimes just randomly select the people to be in a tournament. Some people don't even question when they see a tournament bracket. They're like, oh, well, there's so many people in here. Cool. Well, that gives a lot of people an opportunity. But for listeners like you and I and viewers like you and I that actually care about some of the logic, we would say to ourselves, well, how did they get in the tournament to begin with? How did these 6 men from Raw and 6 men from SmackDown get into it to begin with? And like you said, what exactly are the qualifications? They can't be that high if The Miz is in there, that's for sure, based on what you've done lately. Certainly not. It doesn't make any sense. The reason is, if you were to give them truth serum, is, well, again, the reason SmackDown's involved is, well, we didn't feel like we had enough big stars from Raw to make this tournament feel important, which is, I don't want to go into it again, but I gave you my reasoning earlier in the show. But the other reason, if they were going to ask them specifically about The Miz, they would say, well, we need someone to take the pinfall. Right, we need that one person to be the scapegoat that can't be hurt by losing this match. Right, that's the reason. That's the reason he's in there. It has nothing to do with the fact that he's a credible threat. Of course, no one in their right mind believes that The Miz could win this. No, he has no business winning a World Heavyweight Championship triple threat match. Maybe do advance, but not get to the finals. But I'm with you. Yeah, I mean, the whole Snoop Dogg thing, which to Miz's credit and defense, that wasn't supposed to happen either. Snoop Dogg improvised because Shane McMahon tore his quad on a leapfrog. So, Miz and Snoop Dogg did what they could with what was available to them with a downed Shane McMahon. So, as silly as that was, and I hated it at the time, if it's a legit injury and they improvise, then good on them. It was silly, but it wasn't planned. So there is that. However, The Miz does consistently get his ass kicked by celebrities that come in and is always the butt of every joke. And, I would agree with that, yes. But he was in there simply to take a fall, to lose. He was there to lose. They put somebody in there that wouldn't be hurt by the loss. That's it. So, all right. Well, thank you, Randy. Thank you, everybody, for listening. And I really do appreciate all of your support. Oh, by the way, yeah, Randy, one more thing. It was good to hear the crowd turn on Bianca. The question is it sustainable? Does this continue moving forward? That's going to be key, because if it's in WWE, maybe looking at it as, it's a one-off, right? It's Puerto Rico. Let's see what the other crowds do. And they probably are looking at it like that. If you want to turn Bianca heel, guys, there needs to be consistent indifference and or booing Bianca. All right? Boo her, and I think WWE will go along with the charade. And if it's consistent enough and loud enough, they'll turn her. They have to. Even if they didn't, I'd be looking at everyone like, hey, like, she's been ice cold for a while. What are we doing here? How can we reinvigorate her career? Keep her as champion and turn her heel. Hell yeah. Let's do it. Sign me up. So we'll see if they do it. Time will tell. Right now, there's no indication of it, and that's unfortunate, but let's get to Night of Champions and see what happens. So, all right, Randy, everybody else, thank you so much for listening. Longer show than normal. I mean, we're past an hour and a half here, but if you stuck with us this long, I really appreciate it. Head on over to patreon.com/WWE podcast if you want to get all the ads removed, as well as Apple Podcasts. We have a 7-day free trial, and then it's $2.99 a month. WWE Podcast has WWEpodcast.com has a $3 a month option as well for ad-free. Or if you want merch for the show, great way to support us, WWE Podcast Shop, WWEpodcastshop.com is where you can get our merch. We're going to be putting new merch up there tomorrow. On Thursday, I've got some other logos I want to stick on there that I haven't got to yet. And also, if you want to support us, again, on Patreon is a great way, or give us a 5-star rating and review. That really helps us as well. So thank you, everybody, for listening. Thank you to the callers and emailers. And as always, I'll talk to you next time.
Thanks for listening to the WWE Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss a show, or head to WWEpodcast.com. And for all of these shows ad-free, head over to patreon.com/WWE Podcast. Until then, we'll see you next time.